Because of the way the universe is created, we each of us live in two worlds at the same time. We have to live in the outer life of our own bodies and the inner life of our own souls.
Hello and welcome to Living the Inner Life. I'm your host, Chris Sheridan, and I want you to join with me on a journey into our inner lives with our thoughts, our feelings, our emotions, our life experiences, all these tools that we can utilize to help live a better life, internally, externally, in every way. So speaking of life, I thought I would explore a very simple question and maybe see if we can't get to the bottom of it. And that is, what is the meaning of life? All right. Should be able to wrap that up in about 20, 25 minutes, right? Well, if you've ever read The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy or know someone who has, you would know that the answer to the question of the meaning of life is 42. Bad news is nobody knows what that answer meant. Well, when the Buddha was asked, what is the meaning of life? He held up a flower and said, what is the meaning of this flower? So a big question like the meaning of life a lot of times doesn't get answered. And if it does, the answer may or may not be useful. What it can do is lead to more and better questions to further refine what we may feel about what life is and what it might mean and what it might mean to us. Okay? So by meaning, I'm talking about what is the significance of life, both life in the larger sense, life for everybody, for all life, and individually. What does life mean to you? What does life mean to me? What does my life mean to me? Okay? So it's a very deep question, but since we're talking about living the inner life, I think it's probably a good idea to at least explore this question as to the meaning of life. Is there a meaning? What does it mean? Can it mean anything? Can we know really all about it and what it means? Well, if we're talking about something that's meaningful, then we're really talking about purpose, or that there's some significance or a benefit, that I get something out of it. I can find meaning, or meaning in the sense that it makes sense. A lot of stuff in life doesn't make sense. It's difficult, you would think at this point, as evolved and developed with technology, with thousands of years of history from which we can draw from and learn about the collective experience of our race, of the human race. You would think by now we would have a lot more things figured out. And we do have a lot of things, well, more and more figured out. And when it comes to science and technology, we're way more advanced than we were just 100, 150 years ago. When it comes to transportation, communications, that's electronic communications. And I think we've also, at the same time that we've grown in the technological, maybe intellectual sense, with more and more information and being able to process more and more thoughts and ideas, along the way, we may have lost some of our innate capacities as being a human. So before all this technology, we had to rely on a different kind of technology. We had to rely more on the software of our brains, our minds, our consciousness, our awareness, our perspective, intuition, experience, anything and everything that we can draw from, learning from nature, learning from our dreams. Okay? There are all these ways of gaining information and interpreting it and finding ways to heal, to plant crops, to get by in the world for thousands of years. We've had to really rely on more of our innate capacities. And like any other muscle that you don't use, it begins to atrophy. Okay, it gets weak over time. So because of all this technology, we've been able to increase and expand, enhance our senses, what we can view, whether it's something very small in a microscope or something very far away. With a telescope, there are all kinds of instruments. We're able to rely on these things more and more because they can help us see further and see deeper than maybe we can with our human eyes. But at the same time, we're not using the other capacities of our innate intellect and consciousness and mind to bring to things, so we can just rely on whatever the machine tells us and not really pay as much attention to what's going on inside and what maybe another part of ourselves is feeling about things or views things, maybe even a common sense kind of a way, or intuition that maybe won't show up on a graph or a spectrometer or X-ray or something like that. All right? So we have to look not only at life now, but look at life as life has been in the timeline of our human race. How has that changed over time? Did things mean something different a long time ago? All right, well, certainly anything, again, that's technology-based. You wouldn't have 300 years ago people watching TV and spending a lot of time on social media on their iPhones because we didn't have those things. But they were doing things. There were other things to do. There were arts and crafts and trades, even just getting by in life, the day-to-day, what it took to wash clothes or clean a house or gather food or prepare food or to clean up. You know, it took a lot more time in some ways. Now we have more stuff and more stuff to do, more clothes to wash. And yes, we have a washing machine, but in the total, are we really saving any time? You know, we can do more, but is it taking the same amount of time in the day? Are we really beheld to these machines and this capacity, this increased capacity? Whereas maybe at a simpler time, would have been simple in some areas, but certainly more challenging in the day-to-day, getting by, doing chores, just living in the environment. It was much more difficult. Things were more harsh then. But now we have improvements in habitat and, like I said, transportation and communication. There's so many more things are possible. Okay, but is that meaning, are we just busier? Okay, well, we can travel the world. Well, a long time ago, maybe you just traveled in your shire or your township, you know, your kingdom. And you wouldn't go to some faraway land. There was enough to do in your immediate world. Okay, yes, we have a larger world. We can get to other places and see more things and do more things. But is that really adding more meaning? Okay, more doesn't necessarily mean more better. More means more. Okay, more can be more troubles, more abundance, more difficulties, more money. It could be anything, but it doesn't necessarily mean that it gets better. Well, I can do more. Well, I can look up things online and I can gain access to so much more information from so many different sources. And I have all this information. It's so much more. But is it necessarily better? You have to sift through it and see what's right, maybe compare one to another one to cross-reference and see if these sources line up. There's a lot more work to do, or there can be. All right. So what we're really getting at is quality. Okay. So what is this meaning of life? Perhaps long ago, it was enough to just get by, get through another day, have enough food for you and your family, and do it all again the next day, and hopefully leave enough children behind that can continue with the farm or the family business, or just continue with populating the human race. And hopefully you've bestowed skills and wisdom, lessons upon these children and the people you work and come in contact with during your life, that they're better left having had that contact with you, and it passes it along to the next generation, whether it's the collective history through the stories, the myths that were handed down year after year after year, or the skills and trades to be able to function in the world, or the spiritual beliefs and the metaphysical standpoint of consciousness and these other elements to our lives that we can cultivate and pass along to other people. Okay, so meaning at a different time in the history of the human race may have meant different things at different times. Okay, there is a sense of burden that we have now that at an earlier time it wouldn't have even been a possibility. There are difficulties and challenges from an earlier time that, quite honestly, probably now we wouldn't even be able to handle because we've kind of grown so far from where we came. Okay, so those values, okay, if you're talking about quality and meaning, significance, what does this mean to you? Is it meaningful? Does it mean something? Does it make sense? Those can change over time. And they can also change over time in your own life. I can certainly say from my life, what was important to me in my teens and 20s, what was very, very important then, going out with friends and partying and touring and doing all these things, very, very important. Now, I still like to go out. I still like to tour. I still like to hang out with friends. It's a different kind of hanging out. I want to be home, by 11 or 12, kind of a lightweight. I don't party anymore, but I can certainly go out and have a good time. So my values through age and experience, and plus already having done a lot of things, I've checked off a lot of boxes, and there are many more left to check. So the things I've already done or have done a lot or did at just an earlier time that was right for me then may not be as meaningful. Okay, so as you go through life, especially when you get to midlife, you may want to reevaluate. It's probably something you should do semi-regularly, maybe not every day, but every now and then. Check in and say, is this still important to me? Is this giving me value? Do I find meaning in doing this activity or working this job or having this kind of a lifestyle or pursuing it? Okay, is that really meaningful? Because we can start out, or say in our 20s, get involved with a job, a relationship, a lifestyle, a way of doing, a way of thinking, a way of encountering the world, finding that meaning. But as we go along in life, we grow, we evolve, we have experiences, and maybe that thing we started out doing isn't satisfying anymore. It's not bringing that sense of meaningfulness in our lives because we've changed. But it can be a sort of a silent change that we don't notice. And so we can keep doing the same thing that at one point worked early on. It worked maybe for a long time to give meaning and value and a sense of purpose. But if it's not doing that anymore because our values have changed, then we have to reevaluate what it is we're doing or how it is we go about this thing. And probably a lot more importantly, why it is. Usually if something is done for a sense of meaning or purpose, an activity, a career, a vocation, a job, that it's set out to accomplish that and to provide that, okay? And it may be for a certain reason, okay? Like, I guess I'll go back to me partying when I was younger. That was, live fast. You want to, take in life. You want to meet people. You've been in school for 18 years or however long, and then finally you're out of high school and you're on your own and you can do all kinds of things that you really weren't able to do. So there's this explosion of life and exploration and experience and first times and rites of passage and all these things. And that can provide a sense of meaning, okay? It can be something that's valued at that time, all right? Something that brings this expectancy of satisfaction. And why you're doing it? Well, I've been in school all these years, and I've been living at home and people telling me what to do, and hey, I'm 18 now and I'm on my own and I'm free. That's why you want to go out and absorb and grasp and experience life, or you can, if that's a track that you choose. It was certainly mine with that, but having been 18 for quite a while now and done a lot of things, some of those aren't quite the reason why I want to go out and do things. Now, I want to have some of the same type of experience. I want to have close connection with family. I want to have meaningful relationships with friends, significant other. And I want to do something that I feel like is something that I can contribute, something that I can do in the world. Okay, something I can participate with other people who are doing this thing, and then at some point to be able to share what it is you've learned, how you've grown through this activity, if it's filmmaking, if it's teaching, if it's playing an instrument, that at some point you can pass the lamp, you can pass this light of wisdom on to other people. And that's a different stage, maybe more towards midlife or even beyond, where you've absorbed everything and you've gone out and there's been meaning and purpose with pursuing a career, or that a job can help maintain stability to support a family. That's meaning. There's a meaningfulness, even if the job itself isn't really all that exciting or meaningful, or you come home from work and like, I'm just so satisfied. That was just such a great day at work. It's like, it's another day at work, so what? But hey, it pays the bills, and then you have time and you have this security and stability to provide for your family, if that's where you are in the world. And that can bring sense of meaning. So it doesn't necessarily have to be your job, your vocation. Okay, it can be a combination of several things. We're not necessarily one-track people. We're complex, compound creatures, and we like different things, and we can't expect one thing to provide everything. Okay, now maybe it used to be in certain careers at a certain time where a job would be your identity. You would get a company car. You would have a pension, so your retirement, everything, maybe even your housing was provided or subsidized through this job. Okay, it did a whole lot for you. Now, I don't think jobs alone do as much as at one point maybe they have. We need to supplement or compartmentalize. All right, so whether it's with your career and outward things, whether it's relationships with people, okay? You can't expect one person or just two or three people to provide everything that you need. You may need a friend that you has a shoulder you can cry on, and talk about your problems. You may need somebody else that you can go jogging with, or somebody else you can talk about obscure science fiction movies from the 50s. It doesn't always have to be the same person. You may have to find piecemeal these things, but each one can contribute to this larger sense of meaning, of purpose. All right. So if you're finding yourself at a time and place in your life where things don't seem to have the same meaning, you're not getting that satisfaction, you don't feel that your soul's longing is being met, or that you're living a life of meaning, a meaningful life. Is it seemingly pointless, or just routine, just another day? Or worse, is it getting harder and harder as time goes on, even becoming less and less meaningful, or at least seeming that way? Well, if so, that's a really good time and a really good place to reevaluate, to revisit your values. What is it now that I want? Okay, and how is it that I can accomplish that with who I am and where I am at this stage and age of my life? Okay, maybe it's something that hasn't been really fully accomplished before. Okay, and now's the time to do it. Maybe a hobby you had or a dream to do something as a kid, and you've always wanted to, I don't know, have a sewing machine and, make custom clothes or something like that. I don't know. But you put that aside because you have, career and you have family and all these other things, and you kind of forgot about it. And, oh, well, gosh, maybe you could bring something like that back in, or something you never really got to do because it got deferred for some other reason. That can be brought back in and added to your life to provide a sense of purpose and meaning. So with meaning and purpose, usually we're talking about a reward, that there is something that it is rewarding, not necessarily a monetary or a medal type of an award, but it's rewarding, that there is something by giving out, by doing this thing, you're getting something back. Okay, I play in a rock band and have for years, and it's fun to play, and then people yay, give applause, and it's wow, that's rewarding. Well, sometimes there's nobody there, and sometimes you have a bad night, and it's not always rewarding that way. I have taught at the community college level, as well as just in the community, and in some ways I'm doing that now with this podcast. I'm sharing what it is I've learned and my experiences, and that is certainly a form of teaching. I just call it sharing. I feel like I'm just sharing what I know, things that I have found interesting, and maybe somebody else finds them interesting too, or perhaps the point of view or the way I can express some of these things. All right. So it can become rewarding in the sense that you're getting something back. All right. That it somehow satisfies a longing in the soul. There's a song in your heart that needs to be sung. Okay, so the answer to the question is also in the form of a question: what is the meaning of life? What is the meaning you give to it? Maybe you have to bring something to life. Maybe it's not all there to extract and pull out and reach and grasp and seek and find. Maybe it's something to provide. Service is one of the highest forms of life, of living. It's one of the best things you can do. And usually, again, that happens later on because we're young and trying to find our way in the world and explore and experience. But at some point, you know enough, you've experienced enough, at least a little bit more than the other person coming up behind you. All right. And you can help clear a path, provide a little bit easier road for them to travel. I wouldn't know the things that I know if it hadn't been for other people sharing what they knew. Okay? So this meaning may not be found by seeking. It may be realized by providing, through service, through sharing, through giving. All right? Sometimes the more you give, the more you get, The pleasure is in giving, maybe not receiving. And in giving, you can receive anything. So ask yourself, what do you expect out of life? All right? What do they say? Life is a comedy for those who think and a tragedy for those who feel. It's probably a little bit of both. But ask yourself, what do you expect out of life? What do you expect your life to be? And if it's not providing what you need, maybe you need to provide that to life. And in doing that, you will get to bear fruit, and you'll get to reap the benefits and gain the reward of what you have done to bring meaning to the world. And you can find meaning in your life that way, inner and outer. And thank you for spending a little bit of your time with me here on Living the Inner Life.